On our 5th wedding anniversary, I discovered plane tickets tucked away in a drawer by Arthur Caldwell. I had assumed they were a surprise for me, but the evening brought only a terse announcement of a business trip. Insomnia kept me awake, and while scrolling through my social media, I stumbled upon his ex-girlfriend's post. 18-year-old's dream, to row a gondola in Venice with my beloved, finally came true today. She captioned a photo of herself kissing Arthur on a small boat. I didn't cry, nor did I message him to demand answers. I was simply exhausted after chasing after him for so many years. When Arthur returned, I had just finished trimming the last stem of flowers, placing them in a vase. I used to love tending to flowers. I was so drawn to all things romantic, but Arthur has allergies. Most flowers would cause him a painful, stuffy nose. After being with him, I stopped using perfume, and our home was no longer filled with floral scents. But now I no longer felt like making concessions. Arthur placed a gift box on the table, pushing it towards me with the lid open. It contained a familiar sapphire brooch, an antique piece that I had pointed out to him in a magazine, declaring my admiration for it. He pressed his lips into a thin line. 5th anniversary present. I was too busy at work, I forgot until now. It's all right, I replied, picking up a shrimp, not looking up from my plate. Arthur paused. The words he was about to use lodged in his throat. He stared at me, slightly perplexed, expecting the usual teary eyes and a barrage of questions that followed. I too had assumed that I could never react so calmly to Arthur's betrayal. 5 years ago, on that wedding anniversary, seeing the tickets in the drawer had caused a strange thrill to course through me. It was for Venice. The plan to visit Venice and drift along the canals was something we discussed during our honeymoon, but Arthur's busy schedule kept postponing it. I had thought that this trip was his surprise for me, and so I had prepared a special meal, picking beautiful, non-allergenic plants and adding a fragrant aroma to the dinner. But he returned in a rush, barely glanced at me, and went straight into the bedroom. Soon after, he came out in a hurry. He tossed me the curt statement, "Overseas expansion for the company. I'm leaving on a business trip," and left. Along with him disappeared the 2 tickets for Venice. So, he wasn't going to row with me under the bridge of sighs. So, he had forgotten our 5th wedding anniversary. The carefully prepared food still looked tempting, but I had lost my appetite. I slumped onto the sofa, staring at the burning candle, my eyes starting to sting. When the fragrance candle died out, and the food congealed, I was still wide awake. So I opened social media and saw a post. It was from Arthur's old flame Willow, placed in Venice. The caption read, 18-year-old's dream, to row a gondola in Venice with my beloved, finally came true today. The photo showed her kissing Arthur on a boat, both bathed in sunlight. My phone hit the ground. So Arthur was in Venice with Willow. I should have known. I sat in the cold living room watching the flowers wilt, spending a sleepless night. "Why is it all seafood?" Arthur asked, preparing to join me at the table, a frown creasing his brow at the spread of dishes. "I didn't think you'd be back," I replied, putting my chopsticks down, ready to leave the room. He grasped my wrist, looking at me with a complex expression. After a moment he asked, "Is that it, Ilara? Are you just going to leave?" I turned back, bewildered. What else am I supposed to do? Was I supposed to be like before, preparing a hangover soup for his late return? As I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old colleague. "Are you really not considering Italy? You missed that chance last year. If you miss it again, you might not have another one. I am a jewelry designer, a profession that requires lifelong learning and constant improvement of aesthetic taste. Early in my career, I was fortunate to have a responsible mentor who continued to provide me with support even after her departure. A year ago, my mentor had transferred to a fashion company in Milan as a manager. One of her first priorities was to hire new staff, and I was her first choice. She told me that the company had approved my transfer, and that I would be treated as a senior designer, with the liberty to independently design entire product lines. Furthermore, my style, which is passionate and romantic, would thrive in that locale. My mentor had mentioned it to me many times, urging me to consider this rare opportunity. I was tempted for so long to take it. Not only would I be promoted, but my designs would also be received much more warmly. My only hesitation was Arthur. When Arthur was a child, his father had abandoned him, and his mother, struggling to support a child, was often working, not paying him much mind. He was only 10 when she moved next door. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival, a time for family to gather. And he sat alone at his door, gazing enviously at the sky lanterns floating above. I had noticed his small figure huddled in a corner, and recalled how my mother had earlier shared his misfortune. I felt a twinge of sympathy. "Could you help me launch my sky lantern?" "It's hard to do alone," I had asked, handing him the lantern. He hesitated and looked at me before taking it. I helped him light the bottom, and together we released it into the sky. He still kept his lips pressed in a thin line, but I noticed the slightest of curves form at their corners. Later that day, I dragged him to my house to share mooncakes with me, and he only went home when his mother returned. I was there with him in his most vulnerable, most needy time. Even after going to different universities, we always had a silent connection, until he broke contact during college. Then, after graduation, I received an order from a client requesting a custom-made ring. He didn't give me instructions, but only to design it according to my own ideas and my style. When it was finished, I almost wanted to keep it for myself. But when I met with the client to present my design, I discovered that it was him. I stared at him speechless. I thought that he had found someone else, and was saddened by the thought of it, but still prepared to accept it. I wanted to wish him well, hoping that he had found his happiness. Instead, he leaned in, gently brushing his lips on the corner of mine. My heart stopped and then started to pound frantically. After a long while, Arthur pulled back, staring straight into my eyes, and asked, "Ilara, do you like this engagement ring?" My instinct was faster than my thoughts, and I blurted out, "Yes." I immediately regretted my eagerness. I should have been more composed. He had done that on purpose. He always knew that I liked him, and so it became natural that we married. I remember when I told him I might have to work abroad. He was silent for a long time, and that night, with bloodshot eyes, he looked at me and murmured, "Ilara, are you going to leave me too?" Afraid of reminding him of his abandonment, I never brought it up again. But now I realized that it was he who had abandoned me. My heart was slowly being torn into pieces. My mentor sensed something, carefully asking, "Did something happen between you and Arthur?" I didn't reply, silently admitting it. A moment later, she sent a message. "Life is not just about romance. Look forward. There are vast open spaces ahead. Ilara, your future is right at your feet. Your ticket is for the end of the month. Don't rush into work. Experience the local culture first." When Arthur came in with the sapphire brooch, I realized that the necklace was still right next to me. I didn't even bother with it. Used to immediately put on every gift he gave me and post pictures on my social media. But these late gifts lost that initial excitement. He lay next to me, and with a softening voice he asked, "Let me put it on for you?" I shook my head. "No, it's not convenient to wear it to work." Seeing that I still wasn't complying, Arthur lost his patience and tossed the brooch aside. "Ilara, are you really still mad about that? Didn't I already explain it to you? We were just having fun playing games. I didn't want to ruin the party. And all my friends were there. What could I possibly do with Willow? If he didn't mention it, I would have forgotten how foolish I was before. Last time he had a gathering with his college friends, I was frantic, not being able to reach him on his phone. My secretary called me, and I kept calling him but got the "please try again later" recording. I was so anxious, trying to guess where he might have gone. I eventually found him at one of his usual clubs. As soon as I walked in, I saw Willow leaning against him, their wrists entwined as they were feeding each other wine. Arthur drank from Willow's fingers, her pale fingers touching his lips. I couldn't help myself, and regardless of the others there, I picked a fight with him. Arthur explained it away as part of a drinking game. His friends also joined in, saying, "Yeah, we've all known Willow for years. We all see her as one of us, just a pure friendship." But at their gathering, I've heard them say more than once, "You two are still so in sync. Why not just get back together?" I cried all the way home. Arthur was initially apologetic. "I only see her as a friend, nothing happened." Later he retorted, "If I were with her, would you even exist? Stop making a big deal out of nothing." We entered a cold war. On our 5th anniversary, I thought it was a peace offering, but it ended up being the last straw that broke the camel's back. Coming back to reality, I looked at Arthur's irritated face and said calmly, "You're reading too much into it," and continued looking down at my phone. Arthur was taken aback. It seemed that he didn't expect his usual words to come out of my mouth. "You're really not angry?" He was frowning, looking at me as if he didn't believe it. "What am I supposed to be angry about?" I asked, raising my eyes. Arthur was speechless, his face turning dark. He stood up angrily, throwing out, "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight," and stormed off. I didn't understand. Isn't this what he wanted? For me to not be moody or jealous or demanding answers. The next morning, Arthur had cooked breakfast. He placed a bowl of chicken soup on the table and called me to eat. "You're awake? You love chicken soup." I was stunned for a moment, because when he was young, he had to cook for himself. After growing up, he never cooked again. I understood that, and thought that he didn't want to bring up the past. We've always had me cooking. The only time was when we were newly married and I was hospitalized for having an upset stomach from drawing and working late. He visited me, bringing the soup that he made. It was the best soup I'd ever tasted. I'd occasionally ask him to make it again for me, but he would only say, "If you want to eat, can't you just buy it outside? Why do I have to make it for you?" I thought that he was reminded of his bad memories and apologized. I never brought it up again. But when I saw Willow's social media, I realized. For 4 years in college, he made her countless meals. Because she hated the school's cafeteria, he rented an apartment with a kitchen just to cook for her every day. When Willow came back, he was always cooking at their gatherings because she liked his food. That night, I scrolled through Willow's social media, like a thief stealing someone else's romance. But that love was supposed to be mine. Arthur walked over, putting his arms around my shoulders, helping me pull out the chair. His voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "I remember you like this one, try it?" But it wasn't that I liked chicken soup, it was because Arthur couldn't eat spicy foods nor seafood. For as long as we were together, I cooked to his preference, and made him believe that I had a simple palate. "This is what you love, not what I do," I replied. Arthur was quiet, his face changing expressions before finally settling to forced composure. "Alara, I'll be free for the next few days. You always wanted to go to that artist's exhibit. Let's go together." I found that a little amusing. He had already been there, yet was still acting clueless. I had gotten tickets from a friend for an art exhibit. I asked Arthur to accompany me. He had told me that he was busy with work. Yet Willow had posted a picture saying, "Who is so busy that he still has time to accompany me to an art exhibition? Oh, it's just my sweetheart." The picture was of her holding his hand, a wedding band still faintly visible on his ring finger. I didn't reply and kept eating. Arthur, not bothered, took out his phone, ready to book the tickets. He spent a lot of time looking but still couldn't find the exhibition. I glanced at my phone background, feeling a little lost. "The exhibition is over." Arthur's hand froze, and with his mouth slightly open, he didn't know how to respond. After a long time, he looked at me, remorse showing in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Alara. I promise I'll go with you next year." I smiled, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. "That's what you said last year." The air in the room seemed to freeze, only the ticking of the clock was audible. Ignoring his paled expression, I said calmly, "I'm going to work." I had expected that after being repeatedly rebuffed, Arthur would retreat into a cold war, as he had in the past. But instead, he suddenly changed his tune, messaging me to suggest a concert together. I paid it no mind. He had stood me up for Willow countless times. Once, we had a reservation at a secluded restaurant in the countryside to celebrate our anniversary. But halfway through our meal, Willow called, saying she had eaten some ice cream, and her stomach felt uneasy. She asked him if he could take her to the hospital. After hanging up, Arthur looked at me apologetically. "Alara, Willow has a weak stomach, prone to gastroenteritis. I'm afraid something might happen. Can you find a way to get home?" He grabbed his keys and left. I sat there watching the snow swirling outside, the wind driving the particles into people's necks. Although I was indoors, a chill from my heart spread throughout my body. Not only was it our wedding anniversary, But the restaurant, known for its exclusivity, was located outside of town. There was no way to hail a cab. I was practically numb by the time I returned home, yet not a word of concern from Arthur, so I had long given up on him. Still, not wanting to waste the concert tickets, I went to the theater alone. On my way to the second-floor box, I saw Arthur. Stepping closer, I realized that Willow was also in the box. They were sitting together on a single sofa. Willow was slumped against him. Arthur, wearing only his shirt, had his coat around her waist. His hands were moving inside her shirt, the fabric shifting with every movement. He was gently massaging her stomach. Willow opened her eyes, meeting mine, and whimpered, "A little lighter and down a bit." Arthur looked at her, scolding her gently. "You know you have gastroenteritis and then you don't dress warmly." But his movements were tender, careful. Every movement revealed his affection. My fingernails dug into my palm, causing a sharp pain. Even though my heart had long died, a million needles pricked me. He wasn't incapable of tenderness. He simply reserved it for others. He was willing to learn massage for Willow, yet forgot about his wife's needs. Half of my youth had been given to Arthur, but my sincerity had been stomped on. I pushed the door slightly, the sound a soft thud against the carpet. Arthur looked up, his eyes widening as he noticed me. He quickly explained, "Willow was having menstrual cramps. I just happened to be on my way here and gave her a ride. I was giving her a massage." Willow sat up. "That's right, Arthur was just giving me a massage. Elara, don't misunderstand." She playfully winked at me, her eyes filled with gloating. I was disgusted, my stomach churning. Arthur's face darkened. Noticing I was still standing, he urged, "Come sit." I walked over, pulled off my ring and threw it at him, stating, "Let's get a divorce." He was stunned. By the time he reacted, I had already turned to leave. He sprang up and grabbed my wrist, teeth gritted. "You want a divorce?" "Yes." I took the divorce papers, which I had prepared beforehand, from my bag and handed them to him. He erupted, tearing the papers to shreds. "You always threaten me with divorce." I said she wasn't feeling well and I happened to be going there. "Is that something you have to be so difficult about? You keep threatening me with divorce. I'm sick of it." Willow rushed over, tears in her eyes. "Elara, you really misunderstand. Arthur and I are just friends. If you're bothered by it, I can just go home alone." I recoiled from her touch. "Don't touch me." Willow staggered back. Arthur, concerned, held her. "It was just a stomach massage. Can't you stop overreacting? What are you so angry about?" What was I angry about? It was his unabashed favoritism. He took her hand and coldly said, "Let's go, let her throw a tantrum. Let's see how far she can go." And he led Willow out of the box. The lights dimmed, and the music started. Seated in the dark, my mind cleared. This wasn't the first time I had brought up divorce. The day Willow returned, he had left me to pick her up. When I saw his phone, I learned that she was his first love. We had a huge fight. I accused him of not having boundaries. He accused me of invading his privacy. In a fit of anger, I had suggested divorce. He didn't comfort me and didn't come home for days. I was terrified and helpless, crying for days. In the end, I was the one who gave in, apologizing for looking at his phone and for suspecting him. He knew how much I loved him and how I couldn't leave him. But this time I was done. He didn't return just like before. I was glad for it. I packed away my things, prepared to leave for Italy at the end of the month. On his third day away, Arthur's friends called me, which was unusual. "Hey, your wife. Arthur is drunk, can you come pick him up?" "No, we are in the process of divorce. It's not appropriate. Arthur keeps calling out your name. Your wife, won't you come?" "You must be mistaken. Last time he called out Willow's name." I heard the sound of a bottle crashing. I hung up. I learned that he had spent the night with Willow when I opened my door the next morning. She tried to look embarrassed but couldn't contain her smugness. "Elara, I didn't want to bother you, but Arthur threw up on his clothes, so I had to bring a fresh set. He doesn't want to come home. What can I do? Don't blame me." She pulled down her clothes, revealing the hickeys on her neck. I could barely hold back my disgust. "What? So now you're proud of being the other woman? Do you even have a sense of shame?" Willow's face darkened. She pushed me inside. I was with him first. This house should be mine. Those unloved are the real other woman. You have no right to say that to me. My head collided with the door frame. I was stunned. She pushed me so hard that my vision blurred. I turned and grabbed her collar, trying to push her out when Arthur came home. He stood in front of Willow, protecting her. Can you stop? Why do you keep bullying her? Try touching her again. I opened my mouth, but tears streamed down my face before any words could escape. I bit my lip and pushed them out. Get out! Just get out! I slammed the door and collapsed against it, sobbing. Soon after the door was pushed open, Arthur barged in, his face anxious. He grabbed my shoulders, carefully examining me. Why didn't you tell me you were hurt? He took out some ointment and began to rub it on my head. I pushed him away and grabbed the tube and threw it at him. I don't need your false kindness. You're my wife. How is caring for you fake? I said I want a divorce. Can't you understand? His look hardened. He couldn't understand. All because I gave Willow a massage? You have to have a divorce because of it. Okay, I was in the wrong. I didn't think about your feelings. I apologize. What else do you want? Can I promise to keep a distance from Willow? He became angrier. Finally, he punched the bathroom door. He looked up with an injured expression. Looking at his angry reflection in the mirror, I realized that I had never really understood him. He thought that so long as I didn't actually see him in bed with Willow, he could act like nothing happened and accuse me of making a fuss. He wanted me to give in, to act like nothing was wrong, and to love him. My body began to tremble as tears fell. Arthur's expression softened. He gently wiped away my tears and said, Ilara, we have been together for years. We're the most important people in each other's lives. Don't say divorce, it hurts me. Okay. Arthur started coming home early. On the first day, he brought me a bouquet of lisianthus. On the second, he turned down invitations to go out to take me to my favorite hot pot restaurant. On the third, he went with me to the gym. On the fourth, we ate a meal he prepared at home. On the last day, I arranged to meet Willow. She was late, sitting across from me, her makeup impeccable, and said, Why aren't you at home keeping an eye on Arthur? So free to come and meet with me. Are you here to warn me not to contact him? She laughed, pride brimming in her eyes. As if to say, I'm going to take your husband, what are you going to do about it? I slapped her. She was shocked, staring at me, and asked, Why did you hit me? I wiped my hand calmly. You went on vacation with my husband, kissed him. Shouldn't I hit you for that? Her face went pale before she snorted. So you finally figured it out? My post's there for you. Love isn't something a piece of paper can lock up. I took a sip of my coffee. As you wish, Arthur and I are getting divorced. Her mouth curled in a smug smile. I continued, but he doesn't agree. I told him if he doesn't contact you for a week, I won't bring up divorce. Today is the last day. I saw her disappointment, her spite. I stood up, smiling. Let's see if you have the power to break our promise. I'll be watching. Willow shouted after me. That evening, Arthur came home punctually. He was in high spirits, perhaps knowing that it was the last day of my deadline. He wrapped his arms around me and said, Ilara, let's go to the restaurant where we first had a date. Let's celebrate our anniversary. The warm light softened his features. As he watched me cut the steak, he chuckled, Ilara, how are you still so adorable? He took the knife and fork from my hand and cut a piece of steak, feeding it to me. Arthur was smart. After getting away from his family, he built a business for himself in college. He achieved financial freedom, no longer having to worry about his next meal. I waved goodbye. I took the divorce papers from my bedside table, and with my suitcase I left. On my flight to Italy, I received a message and a picture from Willow. He is asleep next to me, he won't be home tonight. I saved it and sent it to Arthur. Sign the divorce papers. Then I blocked all of his contact information. He went to her company to look for her, but learned that she had quit and had gone to Italy. He remembered how I was excited a year ago, telling him that my mentor wanted me to join her in Italy. Arthur was ashamed that he was selfish and afraid of her leaving. He showed his weakness for the first time, and I had been sympathetic and never brought it up again. But now I didn't feel sorry for him, I just left. Arthur asked, When did she quit? A month ago. A month ago. It was our 5th wedding anniversary. Arthur nodded, his eyes averting. I took out my phone, opened Willow's social media, and showed him the pictures of them kissing in the gondola, and the other posts. Arthur, am I that stupid in your eyes? Do you know how happy I was to find those tickets in the drawer on our anniversary? I thought it was a surprise, but it turned out to be a big deception. What were you thinking while you were kissing her in Venice? Did you forget that Venice was our honeymoon destination? Were you really busy then? Or did you only want to go with the love of your 18-year-old self? You've always had her in your heart. Why did you come looking for me? You always knew I liked you. You broke all contact, and then returned asking if I wanted to be with you. Was I just an option? I stared at him. All the sadness and hurt poured out, choking me. Arthur's face had lost all color. He could not respond. He looked at me with regret, pain, and guilt. No, Alara. I love you. Willow was just something I never had in my youth. I know now that I love you. Can you give me a chance? He looked at me, almost pleading. The prideful man was begging. But it was too late. I calmly said, I don't love you anymore. Arthur was struck, lost. No, you can't not love me. How can you just suddenly stop loving me? I coldly watched him, not believing the pain. It wasn't that he loved me, but that he could not accept that I had stopped loving him. Let's part ways peacefully. Don't bother me. You are free to love the person you really love. I looked at the time, telling him to leave. After leaving him, I picked up my old hobby, skydiving. I used to be a person who loved new experiences, someone who was passionate about life. But with every disappointment, my naivety was worn down. He didn't want to leave and claimed he couldn't live without me. I laughed. He hadn't come home in weeks and now he can't live without me? In Italy, I joined a skydiving training camp. Up in the air, I was both nervous and excited. And then I was flying. I could see the blue sea, the houses. After landing, I took off my helmet. The instructor gave me the 2nd place medal. Yao, I am proud of you. He gave me a big hug. His eyes were wide with amazement. You are good. I never knew you could skydive. And your makeup is very special today, very beautiful. He handed me the flowers and looked at me longingly. My teammates were curious. Who is he? I answered loudly. My almost ex-husband who is entangled with his ex. They rolled their eyes and purposely squeezed past Arthur. You deserve this. I couldn't help but smile. I took the flowers. Thank you. I left, not looking at Arthur. He grabbed my wrist. Alara, I've told her we are over. She won't bother us. Don't be so cruel to me. It was my day to celebrate. I didn't want to hear his confessions. I pulled my arm away. Sorry, I have a date. I don't have time for your long speech. Arthur was relentless. He bought a house and moved in. He probably thought that because I had given in before, that I would give him another chance. I sighed, not giving him another glance. He didn't lose heart, and every day he would stand at my door with flowers and gifts like he was trying to woo me. I gave up sitting in my garden. My neighbor Brown brought me some souvenirs from his trip. Arthur came in. His eyes fell on Brown. Is he the one you went on a date with? Are you two together? How far have you two gone? I suppressed my anger. Don't think I'm as dirty as you. We're not divorced yet. I still have morals. He looked at me, shamed. Alara, please don't say that to me. I finally understand how you felt. I'm such an idiot. I was unmoved, cutting him off. What is done cannot be erased. I can't ignore the cracks, or keep on fixing something that is broken. Arthur burst into tears. I'm sorry, Alara. He signed the divorce papers and slowly disappeared. His lonely figure, melding into the sunset. My youth ended with the day. 2 years later, I was the company's vice director. Looking at myself in the mirror, I looked far more energetic. I was often mistaken as a student. I was happy with that. I traveled the world to see places I had never seen. While in the Maldives, I got a message from a friend. It's karma. After returning, Willow harassed Arthur for years, and he never agreed to marry her. A few days ago, she went crazy and hit him with a car, saying that way he can never leave her. She was arrested and he is still in the hospital. Not a single friend visited him. My friend paused. Alara, do you want to see him? I laughed. I am traveling the world. Maybe one day, I'll go see him if I happen to be in the same city. The clouds reflected in the sea. Time and I were both moving forward.